All right. Joining us now is Ben Tribbett. Ben, as you know, a very long-standing Democratic consultant in Virginia and nationally. He was also the best pundit in 2017, picking all the winners, and said that it was the only one in America that said that the Democrats would pick up 12 House seats. They picked up 15. Nobody can touch that. So he's got the track record on it. And he has done great research in trying to figure out what is going on with this District 94 House of Delegates race between Shelley Simons and David Yancey, and how it all works, and if there is a draw, how that works. Joining us now, Ben Tribbett. Ben, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Great to have you.
Hey, good morning, John.
So before we get into business, tell us how your mom is doing. How's your mom?
She's doing great, John.
Good. Okay, so look, Ben, we thought today we were going to talk about the drawing between these two candidates. Now that's put off. Explain to everybody why that got put off, and if there is a draw, how that works.
Well, this is a great question, John, of how it got put off, because I think a lot of people are trying to figure that out this morning. So the three-judge panel ruled that the race was a tie. Obviously, the day before, Shelley Simons had won by one vote, and they ruled one ballot was for Yancey that made it a tie. Under Virginia law, that's not an appealable decision. There's actually a state code that says you cannot appeal the decision of a recount court. But what the Democrats did yesterday was went back to the recount court and asked them to reconsider their decision. They didn't appeal the decision. They just went back to the same court to ask them to reconsider. Now, I don't think anyone actually expects this to be successful. I think the three-judge panel was very clear about what they thought. They already had deliberated about this ballot. But in the meantime, the Democrats then contacted the State Board of Elections and asked them to postpone the drawing while the judges considered their request to reconsider the decision. The State Board of Elections agreed to do so. And you know, to the short of your question of how did this get delayed, I mean, I have to tell you, I can never remember seeing anything like this before. And not only with the drawing being postponed, but usually the State Board of Elections will never agree to these types of things when one party is asking for it. Usually they're looking for all sides to be asking for something. So the State Board has really put themselves into a bind here. This is the second time they've agreed to sort of what the Democratic lawyers have asked them to do in these recounts. And, I mean, I think it's pretty much setting the Republicans on fire at this point. They feel like the whole world is set up against them. And, you know, none of this is good for Ralph Northam going forward and his ability to pull people together and have a productive session.
So, Ben, let me ask you this. You've seen the ballot in question. This is the ballot where the person that voted filled out the bubble for both Shelley Simons, the Democrat, and David Yancey, the Republicans, and then crossed out Shelley Simons and put Yancey in there. If you were on that judge panel, would you say that ballot is valid for David or not?
I do think the ballot is valid for David under the parameters that the Board of Elections gives for counting ballots. That having been said, you know, it doesn't pass the common sense test because Shelley Simons' name is not crossed out in a way that indicates it is definitely a negative mark. It's a very light sort of dash through her bubble. I think that you apply the vote for David Yancey by looking at the other races on the ballot where they voted Republican. That having been said, they filled in the bubble correctly for most of the other Republicans. There was also sort of a strange marking on the governor's race. So, you know, it's a tough one. But under state sort of parameters, if you make a clarifying mark, and I think that a slash through someone is a clarifying mark against, then your ballot counts. Now, there was a ballot counted for Shelley the day before that both her bubble and David Yancey's bubble were filled in, but her bubble was darker. So this is what happens in recounts is you have to make, it's things the machines can't pick up, and people are making judgment calls of, what they think the voter's intent is to the best of their ability. And so, I feel like between those two ballots, when you have really one ballot where Shelley's bubble is filled in darker than David Yancey's bubble, and then a second ballot where, both bubbles are filled in, but there's a slight slash through Shelley's name, I feel like a tie is probably the most appropriate result. Yeah,
I kind of agree with that, Ben, and I think that's a sober analysis of the situation. What would be interested if that person, if somebody said, yeah, that was my ballot, it would be interesting if the person came forward and said, hey, this was my ballot, and I did mean to vote for candidate A or B. But I guess that would be hard to do because they probably don't remember that or not following it. But that would certainly add a twist to this. Besides, you would never be able to actually prove that was the individual anyway, even if they did come forward, right? There's no way to prove it. Yeah, so you can't do it. All right, Ben Tribbett, walk us through. Eventually, I agree with you. I think this is going to go back to a drawing. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. It's going to decide who's in charge of the House of Delegates in Virginia. It's crazy. But you were telling me on the phone last night, you were walking me through the crazy procedures that this drawing will actually take place, which I think will happen maybe next week or so. Can you walk our audience again, Ben, through what exactly happens, like how this drawing works? It's fascinating.
Right, John. Well, what's going to happen when they have the drawing, the State Board of Elections is going to partner with the Virginia Lottery, and Lady Luck is going to write the names of the candidates on pieces of paper, put them into film canisters. The chairman of the State Board of Elections is going to be blindfolded. Mm-hmm. And then the current Mrs. Virginia is going to pick up the bowl from the governor's mansion and take it over to the State Board of Elections office to proceed for the count to be taken. So all of this is laid out, in detail in the code, and I think it's going to be a real spectacle.
So Miss Virginia, the current Miss Virginia, will go to the governor's mansion and take the bowl from the mansion to the State Board of Elections.
Yeah, I can't stop laughing, John. I'm messing with you.
I figured you were telling me the truth, Ben. That didn't sound right to me, right? Like covering Miss Virginia. Like, what if she's out of town or something? Oh my goodness. So, and the whole lottery thing. But actually, I mean, just walk us through really how does it work? Because no one seems to really understand this process.
Well, okay. So, in all seriousness, and this is sort of a fun situation, but this actually happens every single year. What people don't realize is the State Board of Elections actually does a drawing every year, and it's for who's on top on the ballot. So in Virginia, the top two ballot slots are reserved for the major parties. You'll always see independent candidates below the Democrat and Republicans.
Right.
And the way they determine which of the two parties in what order they're on the ballot is a drawing. So I think it's in the summer, they do one of these drawings. And basically there's a bowl, and they put in two slips, one that says Democrat, one that says Republican, into the bowl. And they're in film canisters, so you can't really see it. It's not like, someone could look through the paper and see which name is on which ballot. And the chairman of the State Board of Elections pulls one out, and that's who's first on the ballot. So they usually do this. Now, no one usually follows this or cares. Right. It's not really a big deal whether the Democrats or Republicans win the drawing. This is obviously, the drawing is well enhanced this year of the import of it and the number of people, the interest in it.
So, Ben, when this happens, is this like open to the public? Where is it actually held?
So usually it's held at the State Board of Elections meeting. My understanding is that when it was planned for today and they postponed it, they had actually moved it, I think, across the street into a larger building because of the demand to see this. So,
right.
We're not quite at the Richmond Arena yet, but we're getting there.
It probably should be at the arena. It's going to be a spectacle, no question about it. And we have no idea now when it's going to be. But the General Assembly convenes on January 10th? That's when everybody gets sworn in, all the new members, the 10th, right?
That's right.
So that's a week from Wednesday. 2 weeks from today, the General Assembly convenes. So you'd think it would be prior to that, right? Because they have to swear somebody in. So I would think it happens before that. So meantime, Ben Tribbett, what is going on in the District 28 race in Fredericksburg, where the Democrats have filed a suit to basically have a new election? They're saying that some of the precincts were on the wrong ballot. Does that have any legs? What will happen there, Ben?
Well, the Democrats are suing in federal court on that one. There was actually a development last night. Josh Cole announced he will not challenge the results to the House of Delegates. That's sort of an interesting decision on a few different levels. One is Josh Cole would have lost the challenge in the House of Delegates. There's no question about it. That having been said, the federal judge who is overseeing his lawsuit, the reaction the judge had to it was to say there's really not a lot a federal judge could even do to consider this while there's still state remedies available. Federal judges don't like to get involved in state stuff until there's no other option for them. And the judge said there are other state remedies available, such as, the recount, the appeal, and then potentially a challenge. Those are state remedies. Now, Josh has given up his challenge or said he's not going to do a challenge. But the federal judge said that he can't do anything until after all the state remedies are done, and Josh is going to proceed with the federal lawsuit. It will be interesting to see if the federal judge comes in and says, if you didn't use all your remedies and attempt to use them, I'm not going to step in, versus whether or not Josh chose to just bypass it and says, now my remedies are done. So this, I think, is the next piece of the case, is going to be a legal procedural thing of whether this judge feels that by not challenging to the House of Delegates, that Josh, by bypassing that remedy, has also bypassed his remedy in federal court, or if the judge says, okay, Josh missed the deadline to challenge before the House of Delegates, now he has no more state remedies, I can hear this case.
So, I mean, has Bob Thomas, the Republican in District 28, by the way, this was for the retiring seat of Bill Howell, the former speaker. Ben, will Bob Thomas, has he been certified, or is that just in limbo?
Yeah, Bob Thomas has a certificate of election, is my understanding.
So he's been certified, so he's going to get sworn in on January the 10th, right, as it stands now. And I guess the only way to stop that would be the federal judge would have to say, no, he isn't going to be sworn in. If they just are sitting on it and don't rule, like a pocket veto, if you will, he's going to get sworn in. So that gets us back to this. So Thomas is there, and then let's say Simons, because I would think this is going to be resolved prior to the 10th. So let's say Simons wins the draw, all right, and it's 50-50. Who the hell's the speaker? What happens?
Well, it's a great question. And I think before we even get into who the speaker is, here's the other scenario that will play out. And I tweeted about this last night. If there is a drawing and Shelley Simons wins the drawing, I think the Republicans are prepared to say every vote was counted. They lost the drawing. Congratulations, Shelley, you're the delegate. Should Shelley win some sort of legal proceeding that causes that vote for David Yancey to be thrown out, and she is elected by one vote because of that, my expectation is that David Yancey will challenge the election before the House delegate, and that the Republicans will seat David Yancey 50-49. So, there are very high stakes in this.
Right.
I think in a lot of ways what Shelley's doing, that she has a much lower percentage chance of being elected delegate by trying to create some sort of legal remedy to throw a ballot out that's going to enrage the Republicans than she does in the 50-50 coin flip.
Right.
I think what she's doing is really a gamble here that's more designed to benefit David Toscano. And I'm not sure that Shelley understands this, but the reason that this is going forward in this way is David Toscano does not have the votes in the Democratic caucus versus Ken Plum to be the speaker designee. Now, if the Democrats have 50 votes, they don't pick the speaker, but they are going to put someone forward to be the speaker. And Ken Plum has the votes to beat David Toscano. A lot of these tactics seem to be designed at this point to delay the Democratic caucus from casting a vote on that. David was successful in getting them to delay it last week because Shelley's race was now tied and they no longer had 50 votes. And he stormed out of the Democratic caucus meeting afterwards when it was clear that he didn't have the votes. So this is all sort of a delay tactic on David Toscano's part to not have the election for Ken Plum to become the speaker designee. And he seems to be putting Shelley Simons up to tactics that are going to benefit him in that rather than things that will actually benefit her in terms of getting elected. So, lots of intrigue here. And the House Democratic Caucus continuing to be the most dysfunctional Democratic group in Richmond.
So if it's 50-50, what you're saying is Toscano does not have the votes within his own caucus to get even forwarded. So if it's 50-50, if the Democrats forward Ken Plum, you would think that he's enough of a moderate that he's going to get at least one Republican vote?
No. I think that if it's 50-50 and the Democrats nominate Ken Plum and the Republicans nominate Kirk Cox, that it'll end up being someone else. But this is procedurally, the Democrats have to have a nominee ready.
Right. So then if Cox gets 50 and then they go to Plum and he gets 50, then they're going to go to the third ballot and they're going to have to find a compromise candidate.
Right. This could go on indefinitely. It could go on until they're waiting to see if someone takes a bathroom break. Because you could quickly call for a vote while someone's in the bathroom and push someone through. I mean, it's going to be complete chaos.
Is there a name on the Republican side that they might forward that might be viewed as a compromise and then I got to take off?
I think there's Republicans and Democrats that both could be compromise candidates, but they're not people that their own caucus would pick.
Right.
And remember, you need to be able to get all those people to vote for you
plus
in order to become speaker.
Right.
You can't have a split ballot.
All right, I'm going to take off. I want to thank Ben Tribbett for that enlightening conversation. Ben, we're going to have you back next week. Thanks for being with us, and we appreciate it.